Aloha. Welcome to ThinkTech Hawaii's Education Movers, Shakers, and Reformers, interviews with people who have special insights into education from preschool all the way through adulthood. I'm Jim Shawn, your host, for live streaming every Wednesday at noon, also posted on YouTube and the Hawaii Educational Policy Center. And today we're exploring music education with Alan Ng, conductor, professional tuba player, educator, many other things. Welcome to the show, Alan.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
My pleasure to be here.
And tell me a little bit about your educational background.
Well, I'm a product of the public school system. I graduated from Roosevelt High School way back in the late 60s. So we're sort of the same age group.
Exactly the same age.
Anyway, I didn't start out looking at education as my profession. I remember when I was in high school, I took a class, occupational information class. And I was actually in that class when John Kennedy got assassinated.
Oh, yeah.
That day, I was in that class. Anyway, when I was in that class, we were looking at different occupations, and at that time, my dream was to become a police officer. And as I sat there thinking about becoming a police officer, I looked at my glasses and I said, you know, if I got into a fight and my glasses flew off, I wouldn't be able to see anybody.
Yeah.
How can I, become a police officer? How can I shoot my pistol at, something I can't see? So I gave that up. And I really didn't know what I was headed to. And then when it got closer to graduation, we all take the exam to get into the University of Hawaii. I took the exam. You had to fill out what college you wanted to enter. And I didn't know. I put down College of Business Administration. I thought I'd end up my whole life sitting behind a desk, being a pencil pusher. And then as it got closer to graduation, I started to get cold feet. I said, gee, do I really want to do this for the rest of my life? What can I do? Who can I talk to? Growing up in a Chinese family, my father and mother really didn't talk with me much about my future. They just expected me to go to college, get a degree, and get a job. So I ended up talking to my high school band director, who became, believe it or not, my confidant, my mentor, everything you expect from a teacher. And he happened to be a tuba player. That was his second instrument. His first instrument was the string bass, and he played for years with the Honolulu Symphony, became a professor, got his doctorate from Columbia in education, became a professor at the University of Hawaii. And so one day we were talking, and he asked me what I was going to do after graduation. I said, I'm going to the UH, but I don't really want to go into business. And he suggested music, because I showed a talent in playing the tuba.
So you had played in high school?
Yeah, and he was my high school band director for 2 years.
Okay.
He took 1 year off to go to the mainland to get his doctorate. But then my senior year, he came back. And then I thought about it, and I said, I have never taken a tuba lesson in my life. How am I going to major in music? And he said, try. So I did. So luckily, there were people at the university who showed compassion and the willingness to help me. And I struggled and struggled my first year at school. I mean, I couldn't read the treble clef because I played bass clef all my life, a typical tuba player. So it was a struggle. I didn't have any keyboard skills. I couldn't sing because I never sang.
So you entered music at an older age than many students.
I was a freshman in college, because I never took lessons before that. I just played in the band and I was very good. I was a first chair player and played in all the select groups in Hawaii and all that. But it was just, I guess, natural talent. That's what they tell me. I don't know. I just played. And I played by sight. If this note was here, I fingered it this way, and I didn't know what I was doing until I got to university and I had to learn all of that. And I struggled. It was a terrible, terrible struggle. At the end of my freshman year, I was ready to quit school. I came home, told my parents I'm going to join the military, and it was a time of the Vietnam conflict.
Oh.
It wasn't a good time.
That didn't make them happy.
No, it didn't. But my father said, it's better to do that than to be unhappy. And so I was planning to do that, but when I went back on a Monday, I talked to some other professors, and they said, no, you have to stick it out for the whole year. And at the end of the first year, we'll see where you are. And I did. And lo and behold, I was able to survive the first year. And then after that, it was, you know.
So you got a degree in music education?
I have a degree in music education from the University of Hawaii. And then, of course, it was in 1968, the Vietnam conflict was raging, and I was planning to get married. And I said, you know, it's not going to be good to be married and be in Vietnam. So I auditioned for military bands, and I was lucky enough to get into a military band. For 4 years, I spent my time in the Air Force Band. I was stationed in South Dakota for a year and a half, and then in Nebraska, Omaha, Nebraska, for 2.5 years with the Strategic Air Command Band, which at that time was a really highly rated band.
So that's a kind of rigorous musical brass
All we
environment,
did
yes?
was play music. The Air Force is the only branch of the service that has a category for musician.
Really?
And we didn't do any other duty but play music.
Wow.
So we traveled all over the United States, playing concerts, parades, retirement ceremonies. You know, I spent a lot of time when I was in South Dakota playing on Indian reservations. And my time in Nebraska was spent traveling to New York, LA to do recordings for Air Force promotional albums.
Wow. So you were professional.
Yeah, it's like
Yes.
a professional job. That's
Yes.
all you did. You played music for 4 years. Then I was able to get the GI Bill, and I decided since I was already on the mainland, I may as well stay up there and get my master's degree. So I applied to the University of Illinois, and luckily got a graduate assistantship, and was able to go there and get my master's degree before coming back to Hawaii.
And still majoring in tuba?
Music ed.
Music ed.
Music ed,
Yes.
yes. But I also put in a lot of time in performance because I wanted to study with a teacher and get as much as I could, you know, from a very famous teacher. His name is Dan Parentoni, who's now the tuba professor at Indiana University. But I was like part of his first generation of students. And then luckily at that time when I was finishing my master's, Iolani School had an opening, and they were specifically looking for somebody with a master's. And I did my student teaching at Iolani with Mr. Wayne DeMello. And so they wrote me a letter and said, we have a position. If you're interested, the position is yours. So I didn't have to worry. I had a job waiting for me back home. And I came home, taught at Iolani for 4 years, then left teaching for a brief period where I was out in business. And then Dr. Leon Burton, who was my music tuba instructor, said, I have a position at University Lab School. Would you like to come and teach? You'll have no marching band. It's a small band, beautifully acoustic room where, you know, the volume will be controlled. So I went back teaching. And then I taught there for a few years, 5 years exactly.
Before you leave Leon, right? I had been at the university doing curriculum, so I was around the area.
So you knew Leon?
I knew Leon, but also the image I have of him is sitting on a bench in a hallway with the famous trumpet player Doc Severinsen discussing mouthpieces, you know. So that, you know, he really had connections, you know.
Right.
And it seems like what you're depicting is a world in which there's a lot of horizontal webs and connections and possibilities that you can go if you can find those connections.
Right. So anyway, Leon and I became very close. He actually ended up being the best man at my wedding.
Oh.
Yeah, we were that close. And so I taught at the lab school, and while I was there, I went back to school and got an elementary ed degree, elementary ed professional teaching certificate. So I was able to then leave the lab school and get into the DOE as an elementary school teacher. And I taught for about 17 years, grades 4, 5, and 6.
Wow.
No music.
No
I
music.
was a self-contained in a self-contained classroom, teaching 4th, 5th, or 6th grade.
Now, in that experience,
Mm-hmm.
did the students get very much art or music education at the elementary level?
At the school that I was at, we were very fortunate. We had a music specialist on staff.
Okay.
So she taught all the music, and I just helped her. I assisted her with my class when we had music period, but I didn't do any actual music teaching myself. I just assisted her. And then after 17 years, a friend of mine said, my program is getting large. I need a second band director. About half of my students, this was a neighboring middle school. I taught at Kalihi Kai Elementary in Kalihi, and then Kalakaua was right next door. He said, half of the students I have had you either in 4th, 5th, or 6th grade. You know them, they know you. Will you come over and teach band with me? I said, why not?
And for these students, that middle school band was their first ensemble.
That was their first
experience.
ensemble experience.
Yeah.
And it's so critical at that age that they be part of a performing group.
What are some of the kinds of disciplines and habits that a young student has to develop when they enter this music world?
The ability to close their mouth and listen. That's key.
Yeah.
A lot depends on the teacher itself, but the student, that's the main discipline. Sit still, listen for instructions, follow what the teacher is saying. Especially in a band situation where you're teaching all the instruments at once.
Right.
When I'm working with the flutes, the rest of the band cannot be going crazy.
Right.
You know, so they have to have the discipline to know that I will get to them when I'm finished with the flutes, and we can do things together. And if you get that ingrained in them right away,
But not
things
only
happen.
do they have to listen to you, they have to listen to each other.
To each other, themselves, to
Yes.
hear what's coming out of their instrument, to see how they're fitting in.
Uh-huh.
To me, it's the ultimate teamwork.
Yes.
You know,
Yeah.
they talk about sports as having teamwork, but music performing groups are, it's a team with so many things happening.
And if you don't practice,
That's the next.
whether it's your lip or your fingers or whatever, it's not there. You can't be there. Right?
Yeah. And that's what I think was one of the things that made me appreciate Leon Burton and what he did for us at Roosevelt and for me at the university. That, you know, he instilled the desire to do your best and to practice. And, you know, I practiced when I was at university enough to get by, you know.
Yes.
I was the only tuba major at that time at the university, you know. And but then when I went to the mainland, you know, I discovered, hey, I'm just a little fish in a big pond.
Yes.
And if I want to play with the big boys and swim with the big fish, I need to start working. And so when I went to graduate school, I made it a point to, you know, force myself to practice, you know, a lot more than I did as an undergraduate.
So how many hours a day did you practice?
As much as I could find.
Okay,
but I
but, you know.
always would say a minimum, in addition to all the workload I'm doing. And I had a little girl. I had a 3-year-old child at the time, so I had to help with taking care of the toddler. 2 hours a day, 7 days a week, and sometimes longer. But that was my minimum.
Okay.
You know.
Well, we're talking with Alan Ng about music education, the discipline of music, and we're going to be getting into what is the status of music education in Hawaii. We'll be back in 1 minute.
Okay, this is ThinkTech Hawaii, and it's Wednesday. Every Wednesday is Energy Wednesday here in Hawaii, the state of clean energy. 4 to 5 p.m. every Wednesday. Come and listen to us. And just to show you what I mean, I'm going to ask Sharon to tell us more.
Come and see us every Wednesday, as Jay said. And we have people like Jim Albers from HECO here and co-host Ray Starling here every Wednesday. We not only go on Olelo and OC16, but also stream live. So please come visit us, hear about the latest in clean energy.
Okay, Jim, you've been here. You got any comment on all this?
As important as energy is in all of our lives today, this is a great forum and a great format to vet those issues. So I encourage everybody to listen in and participate.
Okay, Ray, what do you think for a close?
Well, I think this is the greatest show in the energy world here in Hawaii. You can come here every week, 1 hour, and catch the latest on what's happening and hear from the people who really know what's going on, like Jim Alberts. We appreciate your coming today.
Thank you.
Ray Starling, Sharon Moriwaki, Jim Alberts, and Jay Fidel here in Hawaii, the state of clean energy, 4 to 5
Aloha.
p.m. Wednesday. Aloha.
Aloha.
Welcome back to ThinkTech Hawaii's Education Movers, Shakers, and Reformers. We're talking to Conductor, professional tuba player, Alan about music education, what it takes. We were just talking about the experience of middle school students, of what they have to acquire internally to be in the band. And a few years ago, I know there was a move to add an additional credit of science in the middle school. And the music teachers were not happy because you're competing for time. Talk a little bit about, from the intermediate or middle school perspective, of where you're sort of entering that pipeline of the status of music education in Hawaii as you see it.
Well, from my perspective and experience, I think what's happening is actually quite detrimental to music ed. What's happening in many schools is instead of giving the students an in-depth knowledge of music, they're giving them bits and pieces. And for a discipline like art and music, you need to have enough time on your instrument, enough knowledge about your instrument to begin to really appreciate what's happening. They give exploratory programs where you take a music class for 6 weeks, art for 6 weeks, and something else for 6 weeks. And you know, that's just not enough. That's not enough. And so that's why I think many of the music teachers protested. They wanted the students. I mean, if you can't have a student for a complete year, how are you going to take them from point A to point B? You know, some schools don't even start playing an instrument until the end of the first quarter.
Wow.
They spend the whole first quarter teaching them just note reading to get that taken care of. And then the second quarter, they actually get their mouthpieces to play on. Then maybe by the end of the first semester, they're actually playing from the book. But if you're going to give a kid just 6 weeks of this, it's just not enough.
It's not enough.
Not enough.
No.
So I would rather see music education move towards more students in performing groups, whether it's band, orchestra, or choir. It doesn't matter. Our choral programs in Hawaii have suffered. Our orchestra programs have suffered. There are very few schools with choirs and orchestras anymore.
And for choir, you don't
need a whole bunch of money. You need a good teacher who's willing to teach good music. Same thing with orchestra and band. And so a lot of the band programs have gotten a lot smaller because students are going to other areas, you know, rather than spending the time to learn the instrument, to play well, so that they can appreciate good quality music. And what we're doing, my theory is we should teach music for the love of music. So when you become an adult like yourself, it doesn't matter if it's jazz, pop, classical, you love music, you appreciate what the musician is doing. And that's how I've always approached teaching music.
So music ed in particular, the arts in general, are really competing for time with these other initiatives, and the school day is kind of short. So at the middle school level, did you have band in the middle of the day, at the end of the day? I mean, was that an add-on? How did that work?
No, it was part of the curriculum, but not every student could sign up for it. They limited the number of students that could sign up for our class because they wanted to keep these other classes going. We were willing to take on more students, but the administration or whatever sometimes would say, oh, that's all the students you may have. You can only have them for this period of time. And, you know, so I would like to see people, especially the parents, request music and art as a fundamental part of learning to become a complete individual.
Uh-huh.
Technology is important, but you still need the human contact working with people.
Mhm, mhm.
Whether it's in a band, a choir, or an orchestra, you get that contact, you get that working together happening.
Now, over the last few years, there's been a slight shift in the ability of a principal in a school to control some more of their resources. I would imagine, you know, a band program with all the instruments you have to have and buy and maintain, that this is an expensive ask.
It is,
Yes.
but no more expensive than computer equipment.
Okay.
I love computers.
Uh-huh.
My grandchildren love computers,
Uh-huh.
but I also want them to have that music and art experience.
Uh-huh.
Many parents send their kids to private schools for that experience
Uh-huh.
because they know the public schools in some areas are not providing it.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
So when you look at it, you know, you want the public schools to get better, you need to offer better things for the student, whether it's art, you know, more science, more technology, you have to offer it, no matter what the cost.
Uh-huh.
You know, we grew up, when I was in high school, this is back in the, you know, early 60s, every high school had a choir of over 100 people. Kailua, Farrington, Roosevelt, McKinley, all had these huge choir programs. Every one of those schools had band programs with over 100 kids in it. And every school had an orchestra program.
Which is really fading quickly. at
Except
this
for the
point.
private schools. The private schools still offer it because they know the importance. They know the parents demand it. So the public schools parents have to do the same.
Now, there's the ensemble, the things that go on in the school, but it does, and you alluded this to as well in your own life, that learning to be a musician as a young person is also learning to have a mentor, a private teacher that will spend that time with you. Talk a little bit about, you've done a lot of private teaching, and that's an important dynamic of who's out there to teach individuals.
Yes, I've taught private students from the time I was a student at the university. In fact, Leon Burton, when I was a junior at the university, he said, it's time for you to go out and get some private students. So he was able to contact a band director at Kawananokoa, intermediate at that time, now it's the middle, and got a student for me. And he was a young man who just fell in love with the tuba like I did. And to this day, he's still playing. He became a chef,
Oh, really?
a well-known chef in Los Angeles, but he's still playing the tuba in a community band. He plays, you know, Merry Tuba Christmas every year and
Right.
bought a tuba, and, you know, it's part of his life. And that's what I want for my students to realize that music should be a part of your life when you become an adult, like it is a part of your life,
Yeah.
you know.
So there's also sort of stumbling or falling in love with a particular instrument, yes? So you fell in love with the tuba, yes?
And it was by accident.
Yeah, yeah.
I started as a trombone player, and I was a fairly good trombone player. And when I entered the 8th grade, our band only had one tuba. So the teacher looked at all the people that could play bass clef, and I was the biggest. And she said, you will play the tuba.
Yes.
And so I said, okay, I'll try it. And I struggled. I struggled. This is a true story. From the September to December, I struggled. I couldn't get any notes out of the instrument.
Wow.
And just before we went on Christmas break, the teacher said, wash out your instruments before you go on Christmas break. So we went out, I flushed water through the tuba, and a huge wad of folder paper came out.
Oh.
A huge wad. And the person that threw it in left his name on the paper.
Oh.
And then I went back in, blew on the tuba, and this gorgeous sound came out. I could feel it through my whole body. And I guess that was the moment when I said, oh, this is my instrument. And it was all by accident,
Yeah.
you know.
And for different instruments, there are different sort of solo ideals. Were you able to listen to solo tubas, you know?
I did. My
Yeah.
first solo tuba player I heard was on a record,
Uh-huh.
33 RPM record.
Uh-huh.
Leon Burton said, hey, take this home and listen to it.
Yeah.
It was Bill Bell
Bill
and his
Bell,
tuba.
the famous Bill Bell.
Yeah, and I put it on, and I could not believe a tuba could do that. And
Yeah.
that, I guess, was the first time I ever heard a real tuba player.
Uh-huh.
You know, you hear trumpet players. I
Uh-huh.
played with Doc Severinsen on his first trip to Hawaii.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he played with the University of Hawaii band, but they chose select high school kids to be part of the band.
Oh, maybe
And
that was what I was
could
remembering.
be.
Yeah.
That Doc
Yeah.
Severinsen I
Yeah.
played when Rafael Mendez
Oh, yes.
came to Hawaii.
Yes.
Yeah.
He also made the circuit where I grew up as
Right.
well. And
Yeah, everybody knew him. Yeah.
everybody knew him. The Carnival of Venice, he
Yeah.
would play wonderfully, you know.
And he could do it with one finger.
Yes, yes.
Amazing. But yeah, it doesn't matter what instrument.
Uh-huh.
I want my students to grow up, and I have many former students from the time I taught it, even at Kalakaua. These were students from low-income families, but I'm playing the Hull Community Band right now. And one day I walked in, and this boy started waving to me, and I didn't know who it was. It was one of my former students, because they've changed. I haven't. I look the
Right.
same as I
Yeah,
did, you know, 20 years ago.
Uh-huh.
And he says, I'm so-and-so. I played in your band at Kalakaua Middle School. And I went,
Don't
oh
you
my
remember
goodness."
me?
Yeah, but here he is.
Yeah.
He graduated from the University of Hawaii, but he's still playing. And that's the kind of thing that makes teaching, you know, I guess, rewarding. Or yesterday I walked into a pizza place, and the guy came up to take my order, and he says, are you still teaching? And I looked at him and said, no, I retired 7 years ago. Who are you? Then he explained who he was. He said, oh, I played in your band, you know, and I said, oh. But it happens all the time.
So,
you know?
so this whole musical experience for young people in particular, it involves learning to listen, discipline,
Discipline,
listening to
cooperation,
each other,
and
putting-
sharing.
and putting the time in, right? Maybe having a mentor with a private teacher, but also it sounds to me that there's a kind of idealism that you hear Bill Bell on the tuba, and it's in your head to try to imitate it. You hear Rafael Mendez or Doc Severinsen, that's the ideal. And that notion of an ideal, nurturing an ideal and trying to imitate it, achieve it, that's also part of music.
That's
as well.
part of music, but I think the biggest part of it is sharing your music.
Yes.
So with my bands, we always said, you're playing this concert not for yourself, but for the person next to you, your friend who's
Yeah.
been with you for 3 years in the band, 5 years, 6 years. You're playing for the guy sitting across the room because you know that by playing for each other, you will sound your best. And that ideal of sharing, working together, and then say, this is for my mom, my dad who supported me. So music is not a sterile thing that you just do and you play notes. You do it because you want to share it with people. And that's why as adults, you know, we still play. We want to share. We want to share Christmas songs every year. You know, we want to share a march we played when you were younger with the audience. And that's what it is, sharing.
Okay, well, we're talking with Alan Ng about music, and we're going to get into adults continuing their musical experiences. We'll be back in 1 minute.
Aloha, this is Reg Baker, and I am the host of Business in Hawaii. We talk about positive stories of businesses in Hawaii, how they have been successful, and how they have overcome some of the obstacles that a lot of us encounter when we try to have a business here. And believe it or not, there are a number of positive stories here, and we want to talk to all of you. So we broadcast live every Thursday at 2 o'clock, and it rebroadcasts again on Olelo Channel 54. So I sure hope to see you next time. Please tune in on Thursdays at 2 o'clock. Thank you.
Aloha! How you doing? It's me, Angus McTech, wishing you to welcome and join us to see us on Hibachi Talk on ThinkTech Hawaii. Join my co-hosts, Gordo the Tech Czar and Andrew the Security Guy every Friday from 1300 to 1345. We look forward to see you. We'll talk tech and we'll have some wee bit of fun. And remember, let your wing gang free wherever you be. Aloha!
Aloha, welcome back to Education Movers, Shakers, Reformers. We're talking music education with tuba player Alan Ng. And, you know, when I was young, I played the baritone horn. And I was delighted to find out that there was an opportunity, even if just once a year, to pick that up and relive my youth in music in a brass instrument. And that was through Merry Tuba Christmas. Talk to us about how this got started, what it is, and...
Well, Merry Tuba Christmas started about 42 years ago by Harvey Phillips, who was the professor of music at Indiana University and a famous tuba player that played in orchestras in New York.
And Indiana is well known for its
music program, yes, and developing world-class tuba players.
Oh.
Well, he started Merry Tuba Christmas to honor his teacher. You know, we talk about how I like to honor Leon.
Yeah.
His teacher was Bill Bell, the record that we spoke about earlier.
Yeah.
So he wanted to recognize
Bill
and honor
Bell didn't
Bill
change his name to
No.
Bell.
No. And so he said, well, I'll start up Merry Tuba Christmas. We will play Christmas music only on tubas, nothing else.
Mm-hmm.
And people go, what? So he had a friend, Alec Wilder, who's famous in the jazz world for writing beautiful jazz pieces and lyrics, write 4-part Christmas carols. And there's a lot of connections because Bill Bell died on Christmas Day.
On Christmas Day.
Yeah. And so he said, let's do Merry Tuba Christmas. And he started it 42 years ago, and it's held worldwide.
Mm-hmm.
In Hawaii, we've been doing it for about 30-something years. 2 or 3 people, myself and 2 other people, decided to put it together. When we started, we had 12 people, I think, play. And bear in mind, it's just euphoniums or baby tubas or a baritone and tubas. But we split up into 4 parts, like a Baba Sharp quartet in 4 parts. And that's all you'll hear, just beautiful low brass music playing Christmas carols that everybody recognizes. So up to this point, we have sometimes between 40 and 60 tuba players in Honolulu that show up to play. We have people that visit that come and play with us. We've had people from Japan come and play with us, military people, and Jim himself has played with us, as well as his son, Jason, which was my tuba student. And so we're having it again this year. We have 2 performances. One is at Kahala Mall on December 17th at 6 p.m., free, public invited, and on Sunday, December 20th at Ward Warehouse at 5 p.m. And it's a lot of fun, very informal, and we teach people about the different kinds of tubas we have in the ensemble. They're in different keys, different sizes. We have a bunch of University of Hawaii tuba players that play in the Rainbow Marching Band. They come every year and play with us on their big sousaphones. And we have middle school kids, and they range from middle school up to people in their 70s.
And this is not just Hawaii.
Not just
this
Hawaii.
Is international?
International. They have it in New York, and they play at Rockefeller Center, and they have 300 people
300 tubas.
that show up.
And euphonium.
They have it in LA at Disneyland. They play at, what is it called, the California Experience? Oh, one section where the shops are, where the ESPN restaurant is and all that. And they get in the neighborhoods of 300. So does Chicago. So every big city and small towns all across the United States have Tuba Christmas. And in Japan, China, you know, South America, Europe.
And it's the same book of songs
It's the
and
same book
arrangements.
and arrangements. So once you purchase the book, you can use it forever, anywhere in the world. And, you know, we get together. We have one rehearsal, and it's usually for the people who haven't played before, just so they could sight read the music. And then we play. And it's all in fun to share. Once again, we come back to sharing our love of the tuba and music, not just tuba, but our love of music and getting people in the Christmas spirit. And, you know, it's a chance for us to get together with old friends that play the tuba.
So let's talk a little bit about, okay, I graduate from high school, maybe I go to college, I've been in the band, but opportunities to be in bands, I mean, there's a lot of small group and guitar, and which is a good way of extending your musical life. But you know, a concert band is a group, you know, it has to be organized and everything else. What opportunities are there for folks who might want to continue or resuscitate their musical experience?
Well, believe it or not, there are lots of opportunities, a lot more than 20 years ago. Right now, we have two very fine community bands. One is called the Hawaii Wind Ensemble. They meet every Tuesday night at Sacred Hearts Academy, and they rehearse from 7 to 9, and they put on concerts throughout the year. That's one group.
How big a group?
That group has gotten really large. I think we're up to close to 80.
Wow, that's quite
Between
a big
80 and
group.
100,
Yes.
yeah. We have military people, people who just played in high school, people that played at the UH, professionals like myself who just want a place to play.
Yes.
You know, so I play in that group. I also play in the Hawaii Concert Band, which is another group. And this group was started by Richard Lum, and he's the former band director at the university. They wanted to form a group to promote music education. So that group, the core of that group is about, between 15 and 20 current band directors or former band directors.
Wow, okay.
Plus military people and community people. But it's a smaller group. And it's by invitation only to join this group. So it's a very, very high-powered group. We have about 60 in that group. And we have a concert coming up this Sunday at Kamaki High School at 7 p.m. The conductors are Mr. Stephen Hirahara, which is a retired administrator from the DOE, but he was also band director at Kalani and Farrington and other places. Ernest Taniguchi, who's a former band director. Actually, he's still teaching band out in the Kahuku area, and he also does the orchestra at BYUH. And Richard Lum, the retired band director from the University of Hawaii. And so that concert is just coming Sunday, and it's free. It's a nonprofit organization, so it costs, I would say, anywhere from $500 to $800 to put on a concert. So we ask for a little donation from the audience.
And everybody owns their own instrument, so you come with your instrument.
Other than the percussion. We
okay.
use percussion from the school that we're performing at, you know, or where we're rehearsing. But everybody else, they own their own instrument.
So if I graduated today or this year from UH Music School in music ed, I wanna be a band director. Is there a job for me?
Not many.
Not many.
Not many.
Yeah.
Why? Because many schools have shut down programs or made the program so small. We should be at the point where the programs get larger so we can hire 2 or 3 band directors like the private schools do.
Right.
You know, but what's happening now is there are many band directors that have to teach choir, band. If they have a string program, they teach band, orchestra. And sometimes they'll do Polynesian music, ukulele classes. So they have to do so many things besides band. And it, you know, back in the 60s, you taught band, maybe orchestra. Leon taught band and orchestra at Roosevelt. But he had, and he also taught history.
Oh, wow.
That's something you might not have known, but he was a history teacher too. Yeah, but another opportunity for people who want to play are a lot of the high schools now and even middle schools are forming alumni bands. Where they get together once a week and they do informal concerts at malls and things. But what you can do if you want to play is contact your old high school and say, is there an alumni band somewhere? I know Quantico Middle has, New Valley has, Kalani has, I think Pro City, maybe Moanalua. So there are bands that people can continue to play throughout adulthood.
I remember when I grew up, there was a lot of bands that were formed during the summertime, just for that. Is there something like that here as well?
Yes, there is. The University of Hawaii has a summer band. And a lot of high school students, post-high school students, come back and play at this university summer band. They meet in the evenings, I think on Wednesday nights throughout the summer, and they do concerts. But it gives the younger students a chance to play with older students and get that experience. So if you look, there are places to play. There are also ensembles for different instruments. There's a bassoon ensemble. There's a flute ensemble.
They play the Christmas music. Yeah.
Right.
All bassoons.
All
yeah.
bassoons.
Yeah, yeah.
And there's a flute ensemble that plays Christmas music too, but all flutes. There's a saxophone ensemble at the university that, you know, they'll take, you know, whoever wants to play. I don't know if all the groups audition people or it's open to anybody. So your ability has to be at a certain level. You know, the community band will always say, we welcome anybody if you can play this level of music. So after you hear the band, then you get to think about it for a minute and say, yeah, I can do that. Then you're welcome to join the community band.
Along those lines of being really good, there are a lot of band and solo competitions in Hawaii, right? I mean, there's marching band competitions, which is like a Broadway show these days. But there's also a concert band.
Concert band is a parade of bands program towards the end of the school year, and they bring in adjudicators from the mainland who judge the local bands, and all the bands get to hear each other. There's also marching band competitions, and there's a solo and ensemble competition that they have every year put on by the Oahu band directors.
So is there a like ranking of difficulty of music? What's the highest, you know?
5 and 6.
5 and 6.
Grade 5 and 6. It starts with 1 and 2, 3 and 4, then 5 and 6. The 5 and 6 are usually for the high school students and, you know, up,
So there is this opportunity to strive for excellence,
And
even as an amateur young person.
As an amateur, But we need that in order to develop better musicians. That opportunity to play more and get judged by professionals, and, you know, and get to hear others. That's the key, hearing others, not just the people in your school that, you know, we want to provide for all the students. So, you know, there's music in Honolulu.
Yes, there
but
is.
you have to go out and find it. It
Yes.
doesn't come, because advertising is very expensive.
That's right.
And most people won't read the newspapers anymore, you know, where you see all these ads. So you just have to make it your job to go out and find what there is.
Before we end, what is a good new tuba cost?
Are you ready?
Yeah.
You're talking professional level.
Professional tuba.
They run, it could run as high as $30,000. Wow. A decent one will cost you at least 12 and up. I just had my tuba redone. My valves worked. I had to send it to the mainland. And the work cost me more than what I paid for my tuba brand new.
So,
and the shipping,
So in a school, to buy a decent starter tuba, what's that run in a school at this point?
I would think you can get a decent instrument for $2,000 or less.
Oh, well.
Yeah.
So we should be promoting.
They might not be American made, mind you, but so are all our cars.
That's right. That's right. That's right. Well, we've been talking with Alan Ng about music education, tubas, opportunities to continue in adulthood. It's a part of being the whole person, a rich life. Thank you for your career in education and keeping it going with Tuba Christmas on the 17th, Thursday.
At Kahala Mall.
At Kahala Mall. And December
20th at Ward Warehouse.
At 5 o'clock.
At 5 o'clock.
5 o'clock. Thank you very much. We'll be back again next week with some more education movers, shakers, and reformers. Aloha.